Hi Year 7, welcome to your portrait painting demonstration that we'll be completing this term. I'm going to take you through the steps on how to create your portrait. So the first thing we're going to do is prepare the materials. You've got your cardboard and your stencil, and our first step will be to gesso the arch. Now don't worry about that leaf step. You can do that at the end if you'd like. So you can add in a little bit of water to your gesso, and that's going to help you to spread it, and you can use the outside of your stencil to get a nice clean line, and this is going to give us a really nice surface to paint on. I then stuck down the stencil, the white stencil, to make sure the leaves didn't overlap with the white gessoed area. So this will be week 1 of your portrait painting, preparing the first layer of the background. You can see my stencil got a little bit messy, and then I lifted it up and it was nice and clean. So you're aiming for a nice clean edge. I just used a mix of yellow and blue to get some variations on green. We don't want all of the leaves to be the same green. And once you have a nice general leaf pattern down, we'll move on and revisit it later in the portrait. Then you'll use some graphite sticks to rub onto the back of your portrait photo. And that way we can transfer your portrait onto the gessoed area. Really take a moment to think about the position of your portrait. You don't want it to be off to one side and looking a little bit awkward. Then you can see I just double checked that when I was pressing through with the sharp pencil, it was transferring. And I started with the eye. You want to transfer as much detail as you can in this step. That's really going to help you with the next painting step. Press quite firmly with a sharp pencil, or you could even use a ballpoint pen, and that way you can map down the features and just have a general guide for your painting. If you've done a lot of portraits, you can skip this step and do it freehand. However, if you haven't had a lot of experience painting portraits, I suggest you do the transfer step. Now this is obviously sped up, otherwise this video would go for 2 hours. So this is 2 hours compressed into 21 minutes. Please take your time. You'll have an entire period to do this, but you do need to focus and work because there's a lot of steps in this portrait. So if you're away, please have a look at this video and have a look at what you've missed out on, and that way you can be thinking in your mind what you need to do next in your portrait. Now you can see the transfer is very light, which is good so the graphite won't mix with the paint. So you just want a nice light map of the face. You should be excited about doing your portrait, but if you'd like to do some extension, have a look at the videos on the features of the face on canvas, and you can really have a look at the structure of the nose, the lips and the eye and the ear before you start painting, and that extension work is really going to help you when you come to paint the features of the face. So I'm just going over the areas that were too light, sketching in the main details. I'm now mixing the colours using a warm yellow and a warm red and mixing that together with a little bit of white, and that gives you a Bart Simpson colour. I've then added in a touch of ultramarine blue and some brown to get the darker areas, and now I've got my picture next to me and I'm matching the colours to see if they need to go lighter or darker, keeping in mind that the acrylic paint will dry darker than it appears when it's wet. Now, if you look at the shadow areas of your eyes and nose, they're quite purple and orange. So I'm mixing a purple and orange for my dark areas, and that way all the shadows aren't simply brown. I'm looking at the fleshy tones. So the first step you're going to do when you're ready to paint is tone down all the white of the face. So I've got a mid-tone flesh and I've mixed in lots of water, and I'm just knocking back those white areas of the gesso. And slowly you're going to build from thin to thick paint. So the first couple of lessons, it'll be like a watercolor, just really washing in the dark areas. So my paint is really watered down. I haven't used any thick paint yet. I'm just mapping in the shadows and just think every mark is just for now. You're going to build up the lights later. And this video will show you that you don't need to paint every single detail at the beginning. The very last step is to paint the eyelashes and things like that. So don't worry about any details for now. You're just washing in the shadows with really watered down paint. And then next week you'll start to paint in the thicker paint. So I'm pushing and pulling, but using watered down skin tones. I'm now starting to put in the mid-tones, and if that colour mixing bit of the video was too quick, there is another colour mixing video that on canvas that has not been sped up that you can refer to. So just think translucent darks, so transparent, watered down dark shadows, and then as your painting starts to build up, you'll build up to thicker, lighter areas of the face. And that's going to overlap with those shadows, so don't worry about those first steps that look a little bit patchy. You're going to paint over those with thicker paint later. So everything is just for now. This is layer one. I'm painting my top purple, and I'll knock it back later with some blue and a touch of black at the end. We want a little bit of colour in our portrait, so you can think about what colour top you'd like to paint your subject. So even though my top wasn't a very important part, I still want to consider the shape of my brush marks to suggest tone, and any little bits that overlap around the back, that's going to give you that illusion of reality, having those little, or recognizing that there are different shapes and shadows in your clothes. Now if your paint starts to dry out a little bit, you can just add in a little bit of water to aid the fluidity of the paint. And we also have a little bit of mixing medium for the later stages. I'm now coming in with water and magenta, that's that pink colour, with a little bit of blue to add the purple shadows of the lips. I added too much water, so I'm just giving a little dab with paper towel. It's really handy to have some paper towel next to you so you're not always muddying up your water. You can wipe your brush with paper towel prior to mixing it with the water. So I'm starting to add in the shadow areas now. The deep, dark accents of the lips and the ears and the nose. So I'm adding in a few washes now of pinks, so that transparent pink, so I can still see the shadows underneath and the tones underneath, but adding in some details. So adding in some darks to the eyes, and remember the fibers of the iris and the pupil head out in different directions. So think about your drawings that we did. The reflections in the eyes are going to give you that illusion of reality and life, so make sure you leave a little bit of negative space. So the white bits you can see are the gesso. I haven't painted those white. I've just left those as negative spaces for now. I'm adding in some darker details. Now I'm building up with some thicker paint, some lighter areas. This colour is made with the magenta pink and white with a little bit of the skin tone mixed in. So the lips are still fleshy, but I did have some lipstick on that day. Now that I've got the first layer of my portrait done, I'm knocking back my background because the cardboard was showing through too much, and I'm just going to leave a couple of negative spaces for the leaves of the cardboard shining through, because the cardboard is an important part of our Marikit Santiago inspired portrait. But I am knocking it back with a dark mix of greens, so just some blue and yellow. Now I'm coming in with a little bit of water and painting medium with a nice skin tone, a dark shadow skin tone, and I'm just glazing over some of the shadow areas that are too bright. So I needed to bring the nose forward. My nose was too flat. So I'm just using a transparent glaze over the thicker paint to knock back some of the shadows I can see. So the whole time we're pushing and pulling the forms here. And you can see that's a really subtle way to build shadows. So mixing the skin tone and then using a transparent medium to just knock back some of those shadow areas, especially around the hair, so the hair starts to knit with the skin. So I'm using a wide brush here, and then to blend it in I'm using a brush that doesn't have any paint on it. So I'm switching between the two. Don't go too dark around the lip. You do need some shadows, but you don't want to look like you have a mustache either. So this transparent shadow mix will be really good for around the lips. I'm now adding in the darkest darks. So a mix of ultramarine blue and burnt umber, and for the really dark bits, just the tiniest touch of black. And this is for all the really dark accents. So you need to mix in a bit of water for the eyelashes and make sure they're going in the right direction. So refer to your drawing the features of the face activity for the direction of the eyelashes. And here I'm just adding in some nice dark accents to the hair, the eyes, the eyelashes, the eyebrows, tiny touches in the nose, but the nose is mostly flesh. Tiny touch in the ear, and I'm just deepening some of those shadow accents. We don't want a lot of darks in your portrait, but a couple of little accents are going to help the eyes come to life and some of those shadows to recede more. So just touches in the lips where the cracks are. And so we're not wasting paint, I was just using up some of those shadows in the clothes. Leaving some of the brush strokes for interest. We don't need to blend everything. It's nice to recognize that it is a painting. So I could see that there was a few issues with my portrait, and you can see in the final step I have softened the hair, and that really helped to complete the portrait. So you might need to put your portrait away for a week and then look at it with fresh eyes. And this is what I did in the final step. And it really helped me to figure out what was wrong and awkward about it. And then I was able to resolve it. So your teacher can help you to do this. And I hope you have fun and enjoy this portrait painting task.